Hi guys, and welcome back to Keep Smiling Adventures. And as you may well know, this year I have been bikepacking all over the UK. And in this video I will be breaking down each bikepacking route I have done this year, giving some insights of what I thought about the route, who I think the route is best for, what bike is best, and the difficulty of each route, and also how was wild camping along each route, and finally coming up with an overall rating out of 10, 10 being the best. So let's start with the South Downs Way. The South Downs Way is a marked out trail from Winchester to Eastbourne or vice versa. The trail itself is very well signposted, even as far as being signed for the bike route and the walking route. The route itself is not very long, 100 miles, 160 kilometers long, and the route is rideable pretty much all year round, thanks to the surface mostly being grass and chalk. Although the chalk sections can be a bit slippery when wet, the ride itself, although not the longest, it definitely requires a good level of fitness and bike handling, as the terrain can be rough and the hills are steep. Who is this ride for? This route is for anyone who wants to dive into the bikepacking scene without having too much stress of being completely self-sufficient, as there are water taps all along this route, and you are never too far away from a town or a city where you can find pubs, cafes and food stops. But it is going to be more for people who already have a good level of fitness. Like I say, the hills are steep. So what bike is best? The best bike for this route is definitely going to be a hardtail mountain bike. With some of this route being quite rough, front suspension will definitely help with comfort over the whole route. It will also make descending a lot more fun, as there are a lot of steep descents. You could also use a gravel bike. I suggest getting the biggest tyres you can. A good size would be 43mm and bigger. Gearing on this ride is probably the most important thing though, as it is very relentless with the ups and downs. Mountain bike gearing is a must to be able to enjoy this route and limit the time spent hiking. Wild camping. Well, I found wild camping along this route quite hard, as you are nearly always kind of trapped pretty close to the actual trail, so it makes finding somewhere to wild camp a little bit more of a challenge. The good spots are few and far between on this route. The difficulty on this ride, I am going to give it a 6 out of 10. I'm giving it a 6 as although the location and the route are easy enough to follow and you are never too far away from civilization, I do feel you will need to have quite a high fitness level to be able to really enjoy this route. My overall rating for this ride is going to be 7 out of 10. You get great views, great all year round riding, and because the route is very well marked out, it makes this route a little bit more accessible to more people. This ride also gets added points because of the water taps along the route, something that should be way more common along routes like this. Let's move on to the next ride, and that ride is King Alfred's Way. The King Alfred's Way is a Cycling UK's route, one big 220-mile loop from Winchester heading out to the Salisbury Plain, across the Ridgeway before finding its way back to Winchester using bridleways, nature reserves and finally sections of the South Downs Way. The route itself isn't signed, as it follows a mixture of trails, meaning you will be wanting a GPS unit with maps for this ride. The route itself does get wet and boggy in places, meaning this route is mostly going to be ridden after long sunny spells for most people. Who is the King Alfred's Way for? Well, I think this is probably going to be for people who are completely new to bikepacking and want a good 2 to 4 day trip. The route does have some challenging terrain, especially if wet. However, in terms of rideability, this is probably one of the least physical rides on the list. However, this ride does give you the opportunity to get a chance at being self-reliant, as shops tend to be a little far away from the actual route. So what bike is best for the King Alfred's Way? The best bike for this route is going to come down to the weather conditions. If wet, then a hardtail mountain bike is probably going to give you the most confidence. However, a gravel bike with 35mm plus tyres will get the job done. Wild camping. On this route there are a fair few places to camp, but you do need to take into consideration that a portion of this route is going through MOD areas, and you really cannot camp on MOD areas. The places you can get away with camping, however, require you to set up camp as late as possible, as these routes are still used by other people, mainly hikers and other cyclists. So you will need to use caution when setting up camp spots and make sure no one sees you. The difficulty of the King Alfred's Way. To give this a difficulty rating of 4 out of 10. The reason I'm giving it a 4 is because overall the riding is relatively quite straightforward, and although you do need to be self-reliant on this route, if you really needed help, built up areas are never too far from the route. Overall rating of the King Alfred's Way is going to be a 5. For me, this route seems to miss some of the best of the Salisbury Plain gravel in favour of a field or some single track. The route itself, although taking you close to the significant landmarks, you need to come off route to actually get to them. The route itself is okay, but for me I found it lacks some magic that the other rides have on this list. The next bikepacking route we have on our list is the Quantock and Exmoor Loop. The Quantock and Exmoor Loop is a 120-mile loop around Somerset and Devon with amazing views and rugged terrain. This ride will have you in awe of the beauty of nature and wince as you hike up a muddy pit. This route is not signed and you will need a GPS unit for maps. This ride is a ride that will make you feel a million miles away from civilization, even if there are a few built up areas nearby. Who is this ride for? This ride is for someone who is already comfortable with being self-reliant. The shops are far and few between, and for people who are happy filtering their own water along the way. This route is for the adventure seeker who likes to be away from everyone, enjoys rough terrain. So what bike for the Exmoor and Quantock Loop? The best bike for this route is anything from a hardtail mountain bike to a full suspension bike or a plus bike. A gravel bike with 45mm plus tyres would be possible but not enjoyable. For a lot of this route, this is definitely a mountain bike route at heart. Wild camping on this route. This route was pretty good for wild camping, as you do tend to be quite far away from people and the trails are pretty quiet. It is also very easy to come off the trail out of sight and find a wooded area, which makes it a lot easier to be a bit more hidden. The difficulty of the Quantock and Exmoor Loop. The difficulty of this ride, I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. And on a different day it might have been less, but at the time I took this route on, I had terrible rain throughout, very wet conditions, and that made the ride all that more harder. The trails were flooded and there was lots of long hiker bike moments. My overall rating of the Quantock and Exmoor Loop. My overall rating for this route is a solid 8 out of 10. Although I had a terrible time at the time with the weather and the trails being flooded, this trip was an epic one. It was an awesome adventure. The riding was relentless and there was a lot of obstacles to overcome on this trip. It made the trip all that more epic. The next ride we have on our list is the Black Mountain Crossing. The Black Mountain Crossing is best described as one half rugged pain and the other half beautiful bliss. This ride is a short one at only 73 miles, but don't let the distance fool you. This ride contains some absolutely pure magical moments. The route is not signed, so you will also need a GPS unit for your mapping. So who is this ride for? This ride is going to be great for a rider that is ready to push themselves to the next level and have to become truly self-reliant on their own abilities to feed yourself, find water and find somewhere to sleep. As this ride is only short, it makes it a good starting point to test your ability to adapt to the situation you are in. This ride is remote, rugged and beautiful all at the same time, and there is very little you will find in the way of supermarkets or bike shops along the way, so this is a great ride to be away from everything. What bike for the Black Mountain Crossing? This is a mountain bike route again, so anything from a full suspension to a plus bike is ideal. A gravel bike would be hard work, at least for the first half of this ride, but okay for the second half. Wild camping on the Black Mountain Crossing. Although this is a short route and could probably be done in one day, if you do find yourself wanting to spend the night under the stars, this route is very easy to find somewhere quiet and remote to wild camp. Nearly everywhere on this route you could find somewhere remote enough to spend the night, but if you can spend the night up as high as possible to enjoy the views and the sunset, it is the best way. The difficulty of the Black Mountain Crossing. I'm going to give this a difficulty rating of 6 out of 10. Although a short ride, the first half will test your resolve. With the steep, rough terrain, you will be hiking quite a bit. The other aspect that makes this slightly harder ride is that it is quite remote and there really is very minimal places to stop to find food, water and spares, so you will need to make sure you are well prepared. You will also want to be filtering your own water. My overall rating for the Black Mountain Crossing is going to be a very respectable 7 out of 10. The ride itself gives you a great opportunity to experience some of the beautiful remoteness of Wales and some absolutely incredible riding. The first half may be quite rough and slow going, but you are then rewarded with the second half, which is absolutely breathtaking. The next ride we have on our list is the Bare Bones Bash. Bones Bash is typically a bikepacking race over 145 miles, 200 kilometers, but can just be enjoyed at your own pace any time of the year. The ride takes you around mid-Wales and you will get to ride in a diverse set of conditions, from single track to forest roads, around beautiful reservoirs and across harsh open land. You will find yourself in awe of the beauty and the huge grin on your face while descending and traversing the epic landscape. This is a route you will also need a GPS device for mapping, as the route is not signed. So who is the Bare Bones Bash for? This route is for anyone who wants to spend 2 or 3 days in the wild away from everything. This ride is for people who want to have a great time on a bike during the day and a night under the stars. This route requires you to be self-reliant for the most part, with built-up areas few and far between. You will also need to be pretty fit and be pretty comfortable riding your bike off-road. So, what bike for the Bare Bones Bash? The great thing about this route is you really can use any bike, from a gravel bike to a plus bike. They will all have their ups and downs. There is plenty of gravel forest track where the gravel bike will be optimal, and there is plenty of rough stuff where your mountain bike will shine. Wild camping on the Bare Bones Bash. The Bare Bones Bash is another ride that you will find yourself far enough away from anybody that wild camping is fairly easy, with lots of great locations for a night under the stars. The difficulty on this ride is kind of hard to come up with, as it has the difficulty of being far away from anything if anything goes wrong, but at the same time the riding itself is mostly quite straightforward and the routes are nearly always rideable. So I'm going to just go straight in the middle here and give it a 5 out of 10. It does require you to be self-sufficient, but on the other end, the riding is typically fun over difficult. My overall rating for the Bare Bones Bash is a solid 8 out of 10. The route is a lot of fun. If you want a good, fun bike ride while being out in the sticks, then I have to highly recommend this route. The terrain is perfect for lots of bike fun-filled miles and lots of epic wild camping spots. It's a perfect 2 to 4 day bikepacking adventure. The next ride we have on our list is the Great North Trail. Great North Trail is an epic ride, a 780-mile off-road ride. It starts in the Pennines and either ending in Cape Wrath, the furthest north-westerly point in mainland Britain, or John O'Groats. This ride will take you through all sorts of conditions. Rocky bridleways, overgrown single track, and through beautiful mountain valleys. This ride follows the Pennines Bridleway for the first part, which is pretty well signed, but the remaining part of the ride is unsigned, so you will be needing a GPS for mapping. This route will require a serious amount of self-resilience and being completely self-reliant. So who is the Great North Trail for? This ride is for someone who wants a truly epic adventure. Someone who is happy to be riding every day from anywhere from 7 to possibly 20 days. This ride is for the pure adventure. Being completely with nature. This is for someone who is experienced with spending multiple days and nights outside. Someone who is confident riding over lots of different terrain and with a high level of fitness. What bike is best for the Great North Trail? Now, I'm going to break this down into two parts here, England and Scotland. Now, you might be surprised, but England was way harder and the terrain was more grueling than Scotland. So if you are thinking of just taking on the England section of this ride, then you are going to want a mountain bike, either hardtail, full sus or plus bike. And if you want to just do the Scotland part, I am going to say you could get away with a gravel bike. You will still find you will have to take certain sections a bit easier, especially some of the mountain valley descents. However, if you are going to take on the whole route, either want a hardtail, full sus or a plus bike. Wild camping on the Great North Trail. Camping along the Great North Trail was probably made slightly harder for me over the first few nights as I had terrible rain and weather. Wild camping along the England section of this trail did seem to cause me a few issues, not being able to find somewhere quite quiet enough for my liking. However, camping changes when you get to Scotland. For the most part, it is legal to wild camp. The places you can camp are also everywhere. As you head into the remoteness of Scotland, the places you get to camp just get better and better. The difficulty of the Great North Trail. Regarding difficulty, I am going to have to give this ride a 9 out of 10. This ride is long and therefore does go through some built up areas. However, depending how far you can ride each day, you may find yourself away from any built up areas for a couple days, especially in Scotland. You will want to be experienced at being able to manage food and water, be able to fix bike problems yourself, and have a very good level of fitness and bike control. My rating for the Great North Trail is a solid 9 out of 10. This ride is truly an epic ride. Such an awesome experience. The places you get to ride your bike are truly breathtaking, and the hurdles you will have to overcome on adventures like this are what make these adventures so worthwhile. The only reason this ride didn't get the 10 because the Pennines Bridleway has way too many gates. The final ride we have on our list today is the West Kernow Way. The West Kernow Way is Cycling UK's newest off-road adventure cycling route around Cornwall. This route will take you on hidden trails to beautiful coves. This ride is about 150 miles and is not signed, so you will need to have a GPS for mapping. This ride has plenty of places to stop, plenty of cafe stops to be had if that is your thing. So who is the West Kernow Way for? I think this ride is for someone who already has a good level of fitness, as Cornwall is full of 20% plus climbs, but also wants to try their hand at some more of the off-road side of bikepacking adventures. This route is never too far away from built up areas, so cafe stops are never too far and few between. So if you're somebody who likes cafe stops, this ride might just be for you. What bike for the West Kernow Way? Now, I know Cycling UK say 35mm tyres and above, but I'd say 35mm is a little narrow for most people, and I'd want 43mm at a minimum, as some of the sections can be a little rough and it will make the route a little more enjoyable. So I'm going to say a gravel bike is pretty much perfect for this ride if you can have 43mm tyres or bigger. This ride has quite a lot of small Cornish lanes and double track, so for the most part a gravel bike will be perfect. A hardtail mountain bike will also be good. Camping on the West Kernow Way. Camping along the West Kernow route was made a little bit harder because I decided to take the hammock, and the lack of trees along this route made the spots I could camp few and far between. However, with a tent or a bivvy, I do believe it would have been quite easy to camp, as there is many an empty field. The difficulty of the West Kernow Way. The difficulty of this ride for me is probably only a 4. As for the most part, all the steep climbs are actually on the road, the little lanes, so that makes them a lot less technical from what I was expecting. And for the most part, the off-road sections are mostly double track and easy to ride. The ride is also not very far away from built-up areas. This route could quite easily be done in one go if you are an experienced rider. My overall rating of the West Kernow Way is going to be a 5 out of 10. The ride itself is okay and does take in some nice sights, especially along the coastal areas. However, the ride becomes quite repetitive on tiny lanes with bushes either side of you, meaning there isn't much to see. Most of the terrain is either little lanes or double track. The couple bits of single track there was mostly unrideable, as it was very overgrown. Guys, that is what I thought about all the routes I have done in the UK this year. I hope you found it helpful. Maybe you're planning on riding one of these routes and you needed a little bit more information. And if you do have any questions, please do leave the comments down below. I am pretty active. I will always try and respond and give you as much information as possible. Also, from now on, after I do one of these bikepacking routes, I will do like a follow-up video explaining who I think it's for, basically what I've done today for each individual, so it doesn't become such a long video. But I hope you enjoyed this video. It'd be great if you'd hit that thumbs up button. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. We are getting very close now, guys, so I thank you all very much. If you would like to help out with that goal, the little red subscribe button is down below. And I will see you in the next adventure. Keep smiling, enjoy the adventure. Peace.